Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It's a cool name because that's exactly what you get. You get Life with me every weeknight from 6 to 7. We're doing a live radio show on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. And then we're doing a live broadcast, I guess you could say, on Facebook, YouTube, and X right here from our office, right? This is my office right here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. And we're coming to you every night from 6 to 7 and almost every night. Sometimes we have a Christmas party and we have to have a rerun, but we're live tonight. We're live in the studio. We've been seeing patients all day long and we're excited to be here. And this is it's been a lot of fun so far. People keep asking me, "Where are you enjoying this?" or "Why exactly are you doing this?" or "Why do you what's your point? Is this helping your business or what is your deal?" And it's like all of that stuff. Yeah, sure, it helps my business. I hope it helps our city. I hope it helps our planet. I hope it helps everybody that's listening to this show all over the world. I hope it makes an impact in life. I hope it rises the tide of health in some form or fashion. It's my contribution to health. It's my contribution to our city. It's my contribution to our state. I want people in Texas to be healthy. I want them to shine their lights bright into this world. I want those people in eastern New Mexico where I grew up to be healthy. And yes, am I having fun? Yes, absolutely. Am I super great at it? No, not really. I'm really not all that super great at it, but I'm working on it. And one thing about it is we will be great at it at some point. We're working on it. So all you guys that are listening to us in this is 3.5 months now that we've been at this, and we're working on trying to improve the show. And I'm hoping that we do that before the end of the year, and as we get into 2024, even have a better show for you. But those that are listening to it, those are learning. There's little pearls out there that you can learn. And I know some of you listen to us regularly and some of you catch us off and on. And I appreciate all of you. I hope we're helping you. And I really do hope that your life is better because you listen to the show. So it's been a good week. Monday night show, I tried really hard to make an awesome show on Monday and pretty much stumbled over it. I got some feedback today that it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was. And that's usually what happens. That's what you learn in athletics is when you watch the film, the game wasn't quite as bad as you remembered it being, and it wasn't quite as good as you remembered it being either. So fair enough, but we redid it on Tuesday and tried to make it a little bit better, and so I thought we did. Maybe we did. So, and then Wednesday night was our book review night. So last night we got back into The Body by Bill Bryson. It was a really funny story. We did that the show, and then we got into chapter 5, and we talked about the head and the face and the eyes and the nose and all that sort of thing revolved around our head. And then I went home, and we had a little bit of time just to chill out. So we had a fire going. It was cold and rainy in Lubbock yesterday, and we got a fire going, and we turned on Netflix or something, and I said, "Hey, you know what? I'm just going to eat supper and just chill out for a minute." Got that little fire going right there. We're just going to find a movie, and so I just randomly, which I don't believe in, but I just scrolled through the movies to see if there's anything that might be worth watching, and I came across this Robert Redford movie, and it was called A Walk in the Woods, and so I turned on the show, and it. I don't remember the other star in the movie. He's a big star. He was with Eddie Murphy and is one of his police movies that he was at. But I can't remember. Nick Nolte. Yeah, Nick Nolte was the other guy in the movie. And the movie Walk in the Woods was about Bill Bryson, the author, who decided he was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. And that movie was about him. It was like Robert Redford was playing Bill Bryson, the author of the book, The Body, that we just got finished breaking down on our show. He was, and he was playing him in the movie, and he decided he wanted to go hike the Appalachian Trail, which goes from Georgia to Maine. It's like 2,200 miles or something in this deal, and so I had to actually get on my phone and Google it and find out, was this real? Like, was this a thing? Did Bill Bryson, the guy that wrote the same book that I just got finished doing a show on, I just that blew my mind last night. I thought that was so funny that I got home. I had no idea that movie was even. I didn't even know that was a thing, and I sure wasn't looking for it. And I was just looking for something with some good actors that might be kind of nice to watch on a just a chill fireplace, beautiful Wednesday evening. And sure enough, that was a real story. At one time, Bill Bryson, the guy that wrote The Body, and he wrote lots of other books, decided he wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. Apparently, he made it like 820 miles or something. He didn't make it all the way to there. I didn't get to see the end of the movie, but um, anyway, I thought that was funny. If you want to see kind of it was an okay show. It wasn't a fabulous show, but it did have something to do with the body. So that was kind of ironic the way that worked out last night. So tonight is our Thursday night show, and we're going to get a little bit technical in this show. This is kind of my nerd self that gets to come out on Thursday nights, and I get to talk about some things um, that are a little bit more technical, a little bit more scientific, a little bit deeper subjects. And I thought I would just try to set some groundwork with some foundational understandings of some different definitions that we work on. And I've got this book, and it's real simple. It's called a Crash Course in Metabolism and Nutrition. And it's one of the books I've had since I was in chiropractic school, and it just kind of gives some definitions, because we hear things like, as I age, my metabolism gets slower, which actually isn't true. Not even, that's like, you got to get to be like 80 years old and it might tick down just a little bit. But before you get to that, it's when you're 40, 50, 60 years old, your metabolism is not slowing down. But what does that even mean? What is metabolism? What's the definition of metabolism? What is it talking about? And what are the steps of it? And then some nutrition things like, and really like vitamin K and vitamin D and B vitamins and some of those things that are, we hear them all the time, but do we really know what they mean? And do we really understand what they're for? And do we really understand what's happening right there? So I want to get into some of those definitions. And before we do that, we're going to do an article tonight, and it's something that I found that I think you would be very interested in. And I found it on PubMed. It's in Cell, the journal Cell, December 7th, 2023, and 186. I don't know if that's the volume, but it's a D.I. Sang, Sang, and a bunch of other folks. But the title of the article is "Prolonged Sleep Deprivation Induces a Cytokine Storm-like Syndrome in Mammals." I'm going to read it again. Prolonged sleep deprivation induces a cytokine storm-like syndrome in mammals. When COVID hit, I went home and studied it. I told you guys this before. I went home and studied it, and that weekend, what I after studying it and after breaking it down, and I want to preface that too, because it's not like I went home and studied auto mechanics. It's not like I went home and studied electricity for the weekend and decided I was an electrician on Monday. When you hear me say that, that's not what I'm talking about, because it's not like it's the first time I've ever broken down some issue with the human body or health, and I did it from a wellness mentality. So when I do that, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm trying to break it down from that standpoint right there, and so I went home and studied it. And one of the big things that I learned from the respiratory virus, which I know virologists and medical people, they know all this stuff already, but one of the big things I learned is the cytokine storm. And the cytokine storm is really a problem that causes that's one of the things that causes death. But I'll read just the abstract right here because I think it's very important. Most animals require sleep, and sleep loss induces serious pathophysiological consequences. You get sick, okay, including death. Previous experimental approaches for investigating sleep impacts in mice have been unable to persistently deprive animals of both rapid eye movement sleep. We talked about that when we were breaking down Scott Walker's book uh, on sleep, right? Um, and non-rapid eye movement sleep. Here, we report a curling prevention by water paradigm wherein mice remain awake 96% of the time. Now, listen to this. They kept these mice awake for 4 days, 96% of the time. Sleep let's see, they kept they kept these mice awake 96% of the time. After 4 days of exposure, mice exhibit severe inflammation and approximately 80% of the mice die. Sleep deprivation increases levels of prostaglandin D2, PGD2, in the brain, and we found that elevated PGD2 changes across the blood brain barrier mediated by ATP binding cassette subfamily C4 transporter. You don't need to know all that. There's a bunch of stuff that happens when we have this increase of prostaglandin, the PGD2, and you get an increase. There's a induces both accumulation of circulating neutrophils and a cytokine storm-like syndrome. Experimental disruption of the PGD2 DP1 axis dramatically reduces sleep deprivation induced inflammation. So, thus, our study reveals that sleep related changes in PGD2 in the central nervous system deprive profound pathological consequences in the peripheral immune system. I know there's a lot of big words right there, but basically what they're saying right there is sleep related changes change the nervous system and cause inflammation and the cytokine storm. So, one of the things that happens in this time of year, we get into a bunch of respiratory viruses, and we get into like little kids get RSV, and and people get bronchitis, and asthma gets worse, and it's hard to breathe, and that was what was going on during COVID for the people that drowned and died because their lungs filled up with fluid. That's that cytokine storm thing when you have that increased circulating neutrophils. It was a big deal. It's what ticked me off so much about our leadership during COVID. They didn't tell us what we could actually do to save ourselves from this respiratory virus. They just told us a bunch of nonsense stuff. If they would have just been honest with us and told us the truth, hey, listen, you got to keep your neutrophils down regulated. Well, what increases neutrophil circulation? Inflammation, number one. Number two, if obesity, adipose tissue increases neutrophil, increases that circulation, which increases those cytokines. Cytokines is a chemical that those cells use to communicate with each other. And you do not want a cytokine storm. A cytokine storm is a bad thing. So that is not something that you want to deal with. So the when we get stuck in too much cytokines, that can cause a bad problem. And what they're saying right here is that sleep deprivation induces this cytokine storm like syndrome in mammals. So if you're not getting enough sleep, you're increasing your inflammation. That do you see where sleep now? We talked about it for a lot of times, but these articles just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. But it's not a mystery anymore. It's not a mystery that if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to increase your inflammation. When you increase your inflammation, you're going to increase your neutrophil circulation. When you increase your neutrophil circulation, you're going to increase your cytokine storm chances, and you're going to increase negative effects of having to deal with bronchitis and those type of things. It's really important for us to get our sleep. It really is important for us to get our sleep. There's a lot of science behind that we've if we don't get good sleep, we're going to increase our inflammation. We're going to make ourselves sick. And it reminded me to go back to the 5 stages of the stress response, which you've heard before. First, you're going to get an alarm, and then you're going to try to adapt, and then you're going to fatigue, and then you're going to get sick, and then you're going to die. Those are the 5 stages of the stress response. Don't forget those. They're important. Number one is you have an alarm. Your body's going to try to adapt to that alarm. Like if it got really cold in my office, the alarm is cold. The adaptation would be to shiver. I would shiver to try to increase the heat in my body so that my body could adapt to cold. That's the way I would adapt to cold. Well, if I can't adapt, if I can't shiver enough to get the cold, I'm going to get fatigued. I'm going to get worn out. I'm going to get tired. And if I get fatigued, then I'm going to get sick. Well, part of fatigue is increased inflammation. Part of fatigue is increased circulating neutrophils. You've set your body on high alert, and now you're running your immune system down. You're overworking that whole thing, and you've got that red thing. It's like it's setting you up to get sick, and then you're going to die. So let me ask you, and I'll just be straight up with you. If you're listening to the show tonight or you're watching the show tonight, are you tired all the time? Are you getting enough rest? Are you recovering like you're supposed to recover? Those are things that are really important right there. And if you're not getting those, if you're not getting that recovery and you're not getting enough rest and you're fatigued all the time, think about it. Man, I'm just tired. I'm tired. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm tired. I can't even get through I can't even get through work in the afternoon because I'm exhausted. What does that mean to you? Well, it should mean to you is this: your body got an alarm that it could not adapt to. It wasn't able to solve the problem. There was an alarm in your environment, something in your environment set off an alarm, and your body has tried to adapt to it, and your body is not adapting to it. And if it's not adapting to it, what's going to happen? It's going to get fatigued. That's the third step. And then you're going to get sick. It's not, kind of like what we talked about on Tuesday when we talked about the steps of 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 health and the journey of health. Once we get delivered from the oppression, we're going to go right into the wilderness. It's part of the process. It's not, well, if I'm rich enough, then I won't get sick. Or if I'm white enough, or if I'm black enough, or if I'm Mexican enough, I won't get sick. Or if I'm skinny enough or fat enough, I won't get sick. Or if I'm male enough or female enough, I won't get sick. No, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference if you're rich or poor. It doesn't make any difference if you're black or white or Mexican. It doesn't make any difference what you do for a living. Those steps, that stress response is the same. So I just say that to you because I had a patient come in today. I love her to death. I've taken care of her for years. She just shows up. She shows up randomly. She just shows up every once in a while. She'll get adjusted 2, 3, 4 times, maybe. And then she'll just disappear for a long time. And then again, and what do we talk about with health? What is wellness? Wellness is being at a level of health and fitness where you can take on your day, whatever is thrown at you. Well, she tripped at work. She stumbled over her feet and she fell and she broke her kneecap. She busted her kneecap and it's knocked her down. And it's been like 3 months. She hasn't even been back to work. She had surgery on her knee and now what is that doing to her? Well, now her shoulder is hurt and she's got pain in her arm and her shoulder and she can't get out because she's having a hard time getting out of the chair. And She looked weak and she looked frail when she came into the office. And I just thought, I didn't say anything to her because it doesn't make any difference at that point. But I just thought to myself, it's what we talk about on this show 5 nights a week. What we talk about is you better be prepared for what's coming at you. If you're not prepared for what's coming at you and it comes at you and you're not ready for it, the consequences are horrible. The consequences are horrible. It is valuable to be well. It is absolutely your best option. And I thought about this today. I even made a post on Instagram today. Is this? There's 17 days left of this year. Today's the 14th of December, and there's 17 days left of December. Think about how many people right now are saying to themselves, "Oh no, I'm just going to start at the first of the year. I'll start. I'm not going to. I'm not going to even try to figure out this whole wellness thing right now. I'm not going to do. I'm not going to do any wellness activities right now. I'll just start at the first of the year. That's 17 days. Do you know how crappy you can feel in 17 days of eating crap, not exercising, not getting your sleep, being stressed out? You know how detrimental 17 days can be to your health? Well, in 4 days you can kill mice. If you 80% of them died when you kept them up 96% of the time. Well, are you sleeping good? Are you getting enough rest at night? Right? I just think I don't. What I think happens is I don't think anybody challenges the narrative. I think we just accept the narrative to get along with each other. We just accept the narrative, and then pretty soon, everybody else just speaks the narrative. And the narrative becomes the norm, and we all just go by, we just go with it because we don't even think about it. We don't stop. Like, what if we just stopped for just a second and worked through that thought? Like I've heard Brene Brown and all those high powered speakers talk about just stop. One of those gals says he's got the 5 second rule or something. Stop and just stop for 5 seconds and count out loud. 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now just stop and think about that for 1 second. What are the chances that you're going to make yourself sicker in the next 17 days waiting on the first? Because it's not going to be the first, it's going to be the second, but not really the second. And then that's Wednesday. It'll be the third. That'll be Wednesday. But who's going to start a wellness program on Wednesday? That doesn't even make any sense. We got to start the wellness program on Monday. So then the Monday, now we go from the third to whatever that is, the 8th or 9th, which is the next Monday. Then that's when we'll start, right? Well, what do we just do? We added another 8 days, 9 days, 8 days to our 17 days. Now we're at 25 days. From right now, we're almost a month away from that Monday. And what can we do to ourselves? How much worse can we make ourselves? How much more inflamed can we make ourselves? What if that thought process is false? What if that thought process is not really a great idea? And sometimes you need someone to just point that out to you. Sometimes we all do. Sometimes we just need someone to point it out and say, "Hey, you know what? That's a bad that's a bad idea." And if you're humbled enough and you realize it, you realize that person loves you and they're actually saying it to protect you because they care about you, you would be like, I never even thought about that. I just went along with the narrative because that's what everybody else says. Oh, come on, we'll just start after the first. We don't want to do wellness today. I'm gonna do y'all think that makes any sense? I mean, you can send me a message if you think it. 806-794-0400 is our text line. 806-794-0400. You can send me a text. You can send me a message on Facebook if you want to. It's like that doesn't make any sense to wait 25 days to start being healthy, because you can make healthy decisions today that can catapult you into 2024. You could actually get a running start. When we were training racehorses, sometimes your horse in the gates will sit back and bump his rear on the back of the gates right before the gates open. He'll kind of set back and then start forward, and he'll start forward right when the gates pop open. And when that happens, you get a running start on those others. You'll be 2 lengths out there in front before the other horses even get out of the gate. It's a definite advantage to getting a running start in a race. And we might just be able to get a running start when it comes to health if we just started today. We'll just start today. We'll just start making healthy choices today, and we'll just get a running start. And shoot, by 2024, we'll be so far out in front, it'll just be daylight. We'll just be like, man, that was the best thing I ever did. Is I kickstarted that dude on December 14th last year, and then all of a sudden, man, by the time I was already in pretty good shape, and was already lost 5, 6, 10 pounds by the time I got to the first week in January. I'm sure glad that Dr. Clemmons mentioned that to me. I'm sure glad he said that to me because I never thought about it that way. You're welcome. That's free stuff. Hey, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after these messages. Sometimes I get a kick out of myself. What the heck? Yeah, I think that's I think that's a so how many of those narratives do we say? Thank God it's Friday is another one. That's another one of those narratives that I think we just go along with. Yeah, we talked about that before. Better not deserve, right? That's another one of those narratives we just go along with. Yep. We don't even think about it. And I had a really good conversation with a guy that's my age today. He's my age, and his parents are my parents' age, and we just talked about how in the last 80 years in America, how things changed, and how high fructose corn syrup was introduced, I believe, in 1973. It was a Nixon had some sort of issue, and he didn't want food costs to be part of the election cycle, and so he was really pushing all that stuff. And we figured out how to take the fiber out of food and put the sweetener in food. And part of the reason that we put the sweetener in food is because we could have put a bunch of salt in food. And so we had to cover up the salt by putting in the sweetener, and we had to take the fiber out of the food because otherwise it would rot on the shelves. And now we could keep it in that. And we had this it was really that was the early 70s when all that kind of hit. That was a and we were talking about how our grandparents, when our grandparents were young and they were raising children, they didn't have the opportunity to just have Burger King and McDonald's and Pizza Hut and all that stuff. They that wasn't part of their life in the 50s. And back in the 50s, it wasn't as common to be able to do that as it was starting in the 70s and into the 80s. And so what we see is we have these generations of people that have different levels of health. Our our 70 and 80-year-old people today have a different level of health than the 70-year and 80-year-old people of the previous generation. And part of it was because of that. It was by the design of our food supply. And so we changed that, and we started getting more technology. We started getting more TV. We started getting more um, things easier live, and then it changed the way those our 70 and 80-year olds health is today. And so what ends up happening is we get now, my generation now can kind of look at that and say, hey, look, I got to be careful. I get caught up and trapped in that deal. And that was the advice my dad gave me on his birthday last week when he turned 80. He's like, hey, take care of yourself. You might get to be 80 years old someday. And when you do, you really want to be healthy. Hey, everybody, we're back. This is Jason Clemmons, and you're listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. So tonight we've been talking about some ideas about health and getting into some different ideas. So I want to break down and talk about some just some definitions of things that you might have heard before. And some of this is going to be a little bit scientific. It's going to be a little bit deep, and there's going to be big words and all that sort of thing. So if this is not your style of show, then you might want to catch us again tomorrow night. But I wanted to hit some of these topics, and just because I think it's important. So when we talk about metabolism, so that's the first one, and metabolism um, involves an integrated set of chemical reactions occurring in the body. So your body is going to, it's all chemistry, really. I mean, there's a lot of chemistry that's going on inside the body. And metabolism is involving multiple chemical reactions. These reactions enable us to extract energy from the environment and use it to synthesize the building blocks used to make proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. So the extract energy from the environment, that can be from sunshine, that could be from heat and cold, that could be from food and nutrition, right? Some fundamental points to remember about metabolism. Each reaction does not occur in isolation, but provides a substrate, the substance on which an enzyme acts, for the next. That's a big one to remember. And sometimes when we're in health and wellness, we do forget that. We get really isolated sometimes in one thing. We think, well, this just is happening. This is the way vitamin D works. This is the way vitamin K works. That those things we forget that none of these things happen in isolation. There are, I don't know the number, if there's billions or trillions or quadrillions, however many metabolic processes going on in the body on a daily basis, there's a lot of it that's happening. And so pathways are built up in which the end product forms a substrate for other pathways, producing a continuous process. So one thing adds to the next one, which adds to the next. One chemical reaction ends with some sort of substrate. Like we've done all that stuff in chemistry class, right? Back in the day, we broke down, we created salts and all that sort of thing, right? You put NaCl, sodium and chloride together, and you get salt. Well, that's the substrate. That's the something breaks it down and ends up with something that you can now take and add it to the next thing to cause the next reaction to happen. Many people compare metabolism to a map in which the pathways are like roads with stop off points, intermediates along the way. Roads need traffic lights and speed humps, regulatory mechanisms to control the amount of speed or traffic. That's why if you're putting sodium chloride salt together and you ran out of salt, you ran out of sodium, you wouldn't be able to make any salt. You just have chloride, but you wouldn't have any sodium, right? That's kind of what it's trying to say there. Is if I can attempt to make that simple. Some of the roads are one way, meaning you have to travel a long way around to form some intermediates. You can only go in one direction. Remember, when you make any journey, it is important to know where you are going, but you do need you do not need to know the names of all the places you travel through. And that's a big one because some of the metabolism is long processes. Like I could show you some of these in this book, but there's some really long processes about that. So and there's different kinds. And I don't know if this is all that big of a deal, but catabolism is the breakdown or degradation of energy-rich complex molecules such as proteins, carbohydrates, or fats to simpler ones. For example, carbon dioxide, water. This the energy released is captured into ATP and stored in for later reactions. So when you break something down, it's catabolism. When you build it up, it's um, anabolism. It's the synthesis of complex molecules from simpler ones. For example, proteins from amino acids and glycogen from glucose. So you can either break something down or you can build it up. I know it's going to be complicated, and I try to make it as simple as possible. But the thing that I want you to tie into as we're kind of talking through some of this stuff is that that's what's happening in your body. Because it's like you think to yourself, when you take your vitamins, do I need to take any vitamins? Do I need to, should I take vitamin D? Like, what difference does it make? Well, what difference does it that makes is how does vitamin D fit into this puzzle that's going along in metabolism that is breaking things down and building things back up and making things from our environment to create energy and all those sort of things that are going on in our body. I don't know, and maybe I'm speaking from my own experience, but I don't know that we when we take supplements that we're thinking about it from a chemistry standpoint. I don't know that when we take fish oil that we're actually thinking about it from a chemistry standpoint. Like when we take fish oil, do you actually think about the the EPA and the DHA and how what chemical processes are happening inside the brain and how it works and how it doesn't work? Probably not, right? Most of the people that when you take your supplements, you're probably not thinking about that at all. Well, I wanted to just I want to present that to you because that's kind of that is what's happening, and that's why it's important in the process. Because every metabolic pathway usually contains one reaction that is essentially irreversible and forms the rate limiting reaction of the pathway. Enzymes catalyzing these reactions are subject to strict regulation to ensure that, number one, the speed of the entire pathway is adapted to the cell's needs, how fast it happens is adapted to the cell and how the cell, what needs to happen in the cell. And for any molecule, its synthetic and breakdown pathways are not active at the same time, as this would lead to futile cycle. So, for any molecule, it's synthetic, meaning building it up, and breaking it down pathways are not active at the same time. So there's times that our body's building things up, and there's times that our body's slowing things down. When we say that we get to be 40 or we get to be 50 and our metabolism slows down, that's not true. That's not scientifically sound to say that that's true. I don't know exactly what the date. It's like 65 or 70 years old or later that we actually have a slight slowing down of metabolism, chemical reactions that are happening in the body. So what is happening to us at 50? Because that if that's the case and we think we're slowing down, maybe we're not getting the nutrients that we need to the body. Maybe we're not getting the maybe if you're feeling old and you're 30, if you feel like my metabolism has just slowed down. No, maybe your exercise has slowed down. Maybe your sleep has slowed down. Maybe your nutrition has slowed down. And those things are what's causing this speeding up and slowing down the cell speed of these mechanisms that are going on inside your body. So maybe it's not the case at all that 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 things are that your age doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the environment that you've got your body in that might have something to do with it. And so that's one idea right there. Um, there are three main mechanisms of control of metabolic pathways: supply of substrate. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Control um, and hormonal control, allosteric and hormonal control. Learn these now because they will form the basis of control for all metabolic pathways. So, substrate supply. If the concentration of substrate is limiting, then the rate of the pathway decreases. That's a big one right there. That's what I'm trying to say is that if if the concentration of substrate is limiting, if you are limited on vitamin D, then you literally slow down the processes in the body that require vitamin D. Same thing with vitamin C. Same thing with your B vitamins. Same thing with your fish oil, your EPA and your DHA. If you do not have enough of that substrate, when your body is ready to use it in a chemical equation, then it will slow down the speed of that. Sometimes it will slow it down to a stop. And that will cause your body to feel like it's dragging. There's your answer to feeling tired and sick when you get to a certain age. That's another one of those old sentences that we'll buy into because we'll say it. Yeah, man, they told me and once I get hit 50, I can't ever lose any weight. Or man, I feel like an old person when I'm 40. Or I feel like I'm an old person when I'm 30. Substrate supply is a big deal. You may not be getting the nutrients that you need into your body in order for your body to function. Allosteric effectors bind to regulatory sites on an enzyme that are distinct from the active site. They may increase or decrease the enzyme's activity. Often, allosteric control is exerted by the end product of a pathway, and this may be positive, stimulate the pathway, or negative. So here's an example of study right here, because I don't really 100% know what that word means. And then when I'm breaking it down, when I'm breaking something down, and I'm trying to read through a book, and I run across something that I don't understand, I just go and look it up. So the definition of allosteric. So relating to or denoting the alteration of the activity of a protein through the binding of an effector molecule at a specific site. Well, that definition still doesn't help me out because I still don't understand what that means. So I got to look further. Allosteric, of, relating to, or being a change in the shape and activity of a protein as an enzyme that results from the combination with other substrates at a point other than the chemical active site. So it's look like it's the change, the definition of the shape of it, or how it binds to something. I still don't get it 100%. So I'm going to keep looking at it. I think this is a great life point right here because it one of the things that stumps us is we come up on a word that we don't know, and it's so it's in biochem. It's relating to or designating a function of an enzyme in which the structure and activity of the enzyme are modified by binding of a metabolic molecule. There we go. Okay, now that makes more sense to me. So it's the binding of a structure. And then you say, well, you should have known that. You're a doctor. Well, I don't know everything. And I don't know all the words mean. And you can, if you watch this show, you can tell it already, right? But so sometimes you got to just take it. You got to take a tab. You got to open a tab. You got to read a sentence. If that doesn't work for you, you got to open another tab. That's the one thing I learned in chiropractic school when I was sitting there. I got into chiropractic school and I was sitting in the library one day and I was thinking to myself, I don't understand this. This is complicated. I don't understand why they use these big old words. And then I said to myself, dude, just find the line of scrimmage. Just find the line of scrimmage. Where's the ball? In football, the line of scrimmage is where the ball is. That's the line. If you have the ball, you're on offense. If the other team, if the other team has the ball, you're on defense. So I had to say to myself, what exactly, where am I? Am I on offense or am I on defense? Okay, what are they talking about right here? What does this mean? Because there's only 26 letters in the alphabet. And I know every one of those letters. I learned them early in life. And I know they can't trick me. They can't trick me with one of those letters. They're going to have to use a different language or a different letter, or and sometimes they do. They'll use an alpha or a gamma or something like that, and it kind of tricks me there for a minute because they use Latin or Greek or whatever that is, right? So sometimes, but what I learned, I was sitting right there in the library at Parker College by myself in a study room trying to read a book just like this, and I didn't even understand what it meant. And when I started breaking it down, what I found out was it was like, hang on a second. It's just 26 letters, allosteric. Well, keep reading it till you understand. Like what break it down. So in biochemistry, designating a function of an enzyme, okay, I got that, in which the structure and activity of the enzyme are modified by the binding of a metabolic molecule. Something else hooked on to it. There we go. Easy enough. It changed the structure of it. It changed the structure and activity of the enzyme because of you changed the shape of it, and you changed it. Okay, now I know what that means. Now I can go along and go to the next thing, and have a little confidence in myself that I'm able to. And I'm not look. I'm out here for the whole entire world to see. So I don't care what kind of criticism I get from it. If it helps you be healthier, I'll walk through it like that. So it's talking about the stages of metabolism. There are three main mechanisms of control of metabolic pathways. So one of them is substrate supply. Number two is the allosteric control. Allosteric effectors bind to regulatory sites on an enzyme. Okay, got it. Something binds to it, changes the shape. That are distinct from the catalytic active site. They may increase or decrease the enzyme's activity. There you go. Something binds with it, speeds it up. It's kind of like if you bind your foot with the accelerator pedal on your car, you will speed it up. If you bind your foot with the brake on your car, you will slow it down. Often, allosteric control is exerted by the end product of pathways. This may be positive, stimulate it, or negative, inhibit it. Man, that was great. I hope you guys got as much out of that as I did right there. And then the last one is hormonal control. There are two possible mechanisms by which hormones, such as insulin or glucagon, can affect enzyme activity and thus the rate of metabolic pathways. Get it? The rate of metabolic pathways, the speed of your metabolism. That's what it's talking about right there. Firstly, the reversible phosphorylation of enzymes, which may either increase or decrease their activity. For example, glucagon causes phosphorylation of both glycogen synthase and glycogen phosphorylase. I know that's complicated words. Glycogen synthase is inhibited by phosphorylation, whereas glycogen phosphorylase is activated. It's just saying that hormones can speed things up or slow things down. Hormones can change, it can activate them, or it can deactivate them, and it can make things happen. Every one of you ladies who've gone through menopause know exactly what that's like. 1 second you're going in one direction, and 1 second you're going in the other direction. And things that you thought were happening, things that have been happening one way your whole life are completely happening different, and it's got you all out of whack, right? Secondly, hormones can affect the rate of a metabolic pathway by enzyme induction. Hormones can increase the amount of enzyme synthesized by stimulating the rate of transcription of its RNA. It can make more enzymes to create more substrate so that you can speed up your metabolism. Similarly, under certain conditions, hormones can inhibit transcription and thus synthesis of certain enzymes. This is called repression. I think that's a big um, that's something that if you're really thinking about metabolism, how do I speed things up? What are the things? What are the? It's substrate. It's the shape. Now you can't control. I might, to my knowledge, you might not be able to control the allosteric control of it by the shape of it. That's not. Maybe if it was dehydrated in some form or fashion, you could. If you were change, if your body was dehydrated, you might change the shape of the cells inside the body or the in some form or fashion, and that might slow things down. And hormonal control is a little harder to do. There are some things that are out of our control when it comes to our hormones, but there are some things that are in with our control when it comes to our hormones too. And sleep is one of those things. If you can try to get some sleep, balance in thoughts, all those sort of things. And then they're talking about glucose and glucagon, and that's blood sugar and insulin. That's insulin, and we can control our insulin to a certain extent, to a high extent. We can control our insulin by controlling our refined carbohydrates. So that's one way that we can control our metabolism. So when we talk about metabolism, what we're talking about is the speed at which the chemical reactions inside the body function based on the needs of the cell. So, does the cell need those functions to speed up? Does the cell need those functions to slow down? Those things are that's what our metabolism is doing. So the if we're getting to that age where we feel like our metabolism is slowing down, maybe we should think about the substrate supply. Are you taking? I had a good conversation. One of my ladies this week asked me. She wanted me to evaluate her supplements that she was taking and eliminate some or add some or whatever. Well, we had a good conversation about that, and we were talking about if I would just eat right. She said, "I know I need to take my supplements because I'm not going to eat right because I do not like vegetables, and I'm not going to eat right." And I said, "Well, even if you do like vegetables, and even if you are eating your vegetables, I'm not 100% sure whether or not those vegetables have the same amount of nutrients as vegetables did 50 years ago. I don't know if your body is getting all of the things that it needs if you did eat super clean and super good on vegetables." So now I don't know the answer to that one way or the other because that could be true or it could be false. I'm not a chemist, and that's one of those questions that makes it very difficult for me to answer because I literally do not know if I go to the grocery store tonight and I buy some broccoli or some raspberries or some sweet potatoes or whatever we might buy, some spinach leaves, any of those things that we might buy at the grocery store, am I getting enough nutrients out of that product to give my body all of the substrate that it needs to control the metabolism and keep my metabolism running at a high level and my cells functioning at a high level? I do not know the answer to that question. If you guys know it, send me a text, send me a message if you know the answer to that question, but I don't know the answer to that question. So I've heard arguments both ways. I've heard arguments that says, "Come on, man, that's just a supplement company trying to sell you a trick that you don't need those supplements. Just eat your food, and that's fine." And that very well could be true. And I've also seen some reports and some articles that say maybe that's not, even if maybe that's not true because maybe that doesn't have all the nutrients that you need. And maybe taking some supplements would be a good idea to supplement your diet, add some more substrate to your diet to get your metabolism to function the way it's supposed to function. I kind of, I don't know. I'm stuck between both of them. I kind of lean towards the fact that yes, now obviously, if you're not eating properly, the supplements may become vitally crucial for you because if you're not eating properly, you may be way out of substrate, and then you'll probably come into the office or hang out and say to me, "Man, I think I'm getting old. I just feel like I'm getting old." And maybe that some of these are things that we can control. Hey, that's the end of the show. I hope that conversation was valuable for you in some form or fashion. I hope you guys have a great evening, and we will be back tomorrow night at 6 with our weekly wrap up show. And hopefully, you guys can learn something and have a great life. So, have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.